When you think of Luke Skywalker, the image that probably pops into your head is of the stoic warrior confidently strolling into the den of thieves, ready to take on whatever enemy may present itself. And of course, when it goes down, well, yeah. But the real Luke Skywalker, the one we spend most of our time with during the original trilogy, is more like this. Or this. A lightsaber on his side, a blaster as his go-to weapon, and that lovable droid in tow. So if we want to build Luke Skywalker in D&D as he's presented to us in the films rather than how we think of him, where do we begin? Let's start with race. Variant human is a good pick here. Custom lineage is also viable, but we'll want the +1 and 2 stats. For languages and skills, take whatever works for you. Perception is the standard for your skill proficiency pick. It's also thematically appropriate for someone who will attune to the Force and the additional knowledge of the world that you can feel. But I'll probably go with acrobatics here for reasons we'll see later. As for the feat, we'll tackle this in a moment. You're probably screaming, "This is an easy one, take telekinetic." But it's actually a bit more complicated than that, as we'll see in a bit. For stats, we're going to go with 8 strength, 15 dex, 14 con, 15 intelligence, 10 wisdom, and 8 charisma. The goal here isn't to match Luke's physical and mental attributes exactly. Luke may well be wiser than a 10, stronger than an 8, or less intelligent than a 16. I would much prefer to match Luke's skills and powers, which require specific multi-classes to make work. And to do that, we need specific stats that may or may not perfectly match with our perceptions of a character's stats. And on that note, at the end of this video, I'm going to discuss a different stat block to give us a little less optimized but more, let's say, story-accurate build option. For background, as far as I can tell, 2 backgrounds work here. Outlander works for a young moisture farmer on a planet farthest from the bright center of the universe. I think it fits, but perhaps even better is the sailor background as a proxy for Luke's piloting skills. We get some useful proficiencies. If you've already taken perception or will with our class selection, then insight is a good pick here. All right, let's get into the feat options. There are 2, some would say, obvious choices for feats, telekinetic and telepathic. Both are half feats, which will give us a bump to a mental stat. We'd take intelligence, and if we went custom lineage, that would get us to an 18 intelligence right away. That's great, but as we'll see, we'll really need that 16 dex for both defensive and offensive reasons, which is why we're going variant human. So we'll have double 16s in dex and intelligence. But we can get that 18 with the 2 half feats after our first ASI, ability score improvement. And that's great, right? Well, unfortunately, if we're trying to follow Luke's progression, he just doesn't have any of the abilities offered by the telepathic or telekinetic feats at this point. In fact, in the entire trilogy, Luke never once uses the force push-pull ability that you get with the telekinetic feat. That actually blew my mind when I went through those films. The telepathic feat, on the other hand, gives us abilities that match perfectly with what Luke can do, eventually. All that said, this is a game and you're playing this character to have fun, so I'd probably take the telepathic feat, bump my intelligence, and not worry too much about it. But some other options that stick to the story progression would be something like the alert feat, or even the skill expert feat to really bump your perception while getting you a +1 to any stat. And for our class, we're not going paladin, we're not going monk, we're going to take artificer for 2 levels. Why artificer? For one, it gives us a sci-fi feel we want for this type of character. But more importantly, when we meet Luke, one of his primary skills on screen is his tinkering ability, specifically with droids and other mechanical devices. Luke wants to buy power converters, something he does for fun with his friends. He tinkers with R2-D2, which kicks off the entire franchise, and he even reattaches C-3PO's arm. You may be saying, what about magic weapons? An artificer should be able to make those.
I see you have constructed a new lightsaber. Your skills are complete.
In those first 2 levels, we get proficiency with light and medium armor, which we will take advantage of for part of this character's career, and proficiency with shields and simple weapons, also useful for us. Proficiency with thieves and tinker's tools specifically fits well. Take whatever skills you like. I'd probably take perception here and investigation, whatever works for you. And as far as firearms are concerned, I'm going to assume your DM doesn't allow them in campaign, especially the laser pistol variant and the DMG. For equipment, make sure you take the light crossbow and you'll want scale mail. In these first 2 levels, we also get magical tinkering. which is basically flavor or a ribbon feature. I'd probably never use it. We also get spellcasting at level 1. Let's take a moment to talk about that. Luke doesn't cast spells, at least not for a while, but the Artificer can cast spells. So how do we rectify those two facts? Do we just not cast anything? It doesn't seem smart. Let's take a look at the magic of Artifice. As an Artificer, you use tools when you cast your spells. When describing your spell casting, think about how you're using a tool to perform the spell effect. You cast Cure Wounds using alchemist supplies. You could be quickly producing a salve. If you cast it using Tinker's tools, you might have a miniature mechanical spider that binds wounds. When you cast Poison Spray, you could flame foul chemicals or use a wand that spits venom. The effect of the spell is the same as for a spellcaster of any other class, but your method of spellcasting is special. In other words, flavor your spells with technology. But which spells should we take? Let's stick with things that Luke actually has or can do at this point. For cantrips, we'll take Mending, since Luke's best on-screen skill to this point, besides complaining, is repairing stuff. We'll also take Message. Right now we can flavor that as a communication device, but later, with more training, it will function as telepathic ability instead of technology. For leveled spells, there aren't a lot of great options for Luke at this point. The only one I'll highlight here is Jump, which can be flavored as a grappling hook. Other good options for Luke's abilities at this point include Grease, Alarm, or Snare, just anything with that technological feel. Eventually, spells like Catapult, Absorb Elements, Detect Magic, Featherfall, even Longstrider, and Cure Wounds are well within the powers of a Force user. But not now. Not for Luke. As mentioned in the feat section, if you want to change up your selections and not match Luke's perfectly, if you think it'll be more fun, you should totally do that. Finally, at second level, we get infusions, magic stuff, woohoo! The first real piece of technology we see Luke use beyond something to clean or repair droids are these binoculars that he uses to see at night. We will replicate magic item for goggles at night, giving us dark vision out to 60 feet, which works well enough here. What else does Luke use that can fit here? Well, he uses a blaster. Like a lot. More than you probably remember. And even during and after his training with Obi-Wan and Yoda, he still uses a blaster. The best way for us to get that blaster feel is with the repeating shot infusion. It gives us a +1 to attack and damage rolls and ignores the loading property. If we don't load ammunition in the weapon, it automatically creates its own vanishing magic ammunition. It's a blaster. We made a blaster. In A New Hope, Luke uses an E11 blaster rifle meant to be used with two hands, which is why we wanted a light crossbow, also a two-handed weapon. He eventually switches to the Model 57 blaster pistol, and when he does, we'll want to switch out our light crossbow for a hand crossbow, and that will be doable with the multi-classing we're about to do. Okay, armor. Does Luke wear it? Early on he does, for a surprisingly large amount of screen time as he runs around in Stormtrooper gear, and since we don't want to die after our first battle, I would take whatever medium armor you can get and wear until later levels, when Luke goes full Jedi.
I have something here for you.
Oh, by the way, if you haven't already, get yourself a lightsaber. We're building Luke Skywalker, you need a lightsaber. The D&D version of the lightsaber is the Sunblade. It's a blade hilt, and as a bonus action, you can make a blade of pure radiance spring into existence. It's a lightsaber. But if your DM doesn't want to just hand you a +2 weapon, you always have the option to use one of your infusions, probably the Goggles of Night, to create a Moon Touch sword. It's a sword that sheds light and not much else, but it'll do. Now that Luke has a lightsaber, he needs to learn how to use it. So we're going to take 2 levels in Fighter. Luke spends some time with Obi-Wan and learns how to wield a sword, although he's not particularly good right now. We get a few things with the move to Fighter. We get proficiency with martial weapons, which actually won't matter much in another level. We get Second Wind, a nice little bonus action heal. And of course we get a fighting style. We're not going dueling, we're not going archery to boost our blaster damage. We're going blind fighting. This is the first Force skill Luke learns. It's the first time we see him tap into the power of the Force. It's the perfect fighting style for us to take. At Fighter 2, we get Action Surge, one of the best abilities in the game. After that, we're going to go back into Artificer for our Artificer Specialist selection. Here, we're going to grab Battlesmith for a couple of reasons. First, Luke's skills with a lightsaber aren't merely physical. He's aided by his connection to the Force. The Battlesmith's Battle Ready feature allows us to attack and do damage with our intelligence instead of a physical stat like Strength or Dex. That's key in helping us become more of a sad, single attribute dependent character, while also fitting thematically with how Luke's skills grow. It's not so much Luke's intelligence that makes him a great fighter, but that connection to the Force. In D&D terms, that would probably be the weave that propels his martial skills to the level he achieves. And second, and perhaps most importantly, we gain access to the Steel Defender feature. A trusty metallic companion aiding you in battle right by your side, who could that be? With a 15 armor class and right around 20 to 22 hit points, the Steel Defender won't be terribly durable, just like R2, but you can always fix him right up with some mending. Deflect Attack is great to provide disadvantage on an attack using its reaction, and the Force-empowered Rend will provide some extra damage when you have a bonus action free. I've heard some complaints that people don't feel R2 has an attack. Well, he does. It's got about a 5-foot reach, and it's not particularly powerful, but it does break steel, so it's not nothing. I feel like it's a good fit. With Battlesmith, we get our Battlesmith spells, Heroism and Shield. Heroism is fine. It's not a great thematic fit, but I can see an argument that this is attuning to the Force and strengthening your resolve or whatever. If you have concentration free and cast it right before a battle, it's not bad. Now, Shield is a different story. Thematically, it fits the Jedi perfectly. Mechanically, it's a fantastic spell. But unfortunately, Luke doesn't possess an ability like this just yet. You can make the argument that Luke blocking blaster bolts with his lightsaber is a way to flavor the shield spell. And although we don't see this in practice until Return of the Jedi, Luke has already learned that skill with Obi-Wan. Then the shield spell should be fair game. You decide. Here I would also switch out the message cantrip for guidance. As Luke starts to really tap into his Force potential, he can aid his skills via that connection, so I think guidance works perfect for that, with a D4 added to an ability check of your choice. As a level 5 character without extra attack, I would probably also pick up one of the Skag cantrips, Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade. If you want to stay effective in melee between now and level 8, this is the way to go. It's not thematically perfect, but Green Flame Blade is certainly reminiscent of another green-bladed weapon. And that's basically it for A New Hope. That's Luke, an Artificer 3, Battlesmith, Fighter 2. He's not a great fighter, he's a solid pilot with decent shooting ability and a growing connection to the Force. But all that's about to change. At level 6, we're going to take Fighter 3, the Psy Warrior, the D&D Jedi. We get a few cool abilities here: Protect the Field, Psionic Strike, and Telekinetic Movement. When Luke goes off to train with Yoda, we don't actually see him work on any of his melee or lightsaber skills. He's mostly doing stuff like this. But he comes out of his training able to do this. He hangs in melee with one of the baddest dudes in the galaxy. So we're going to focus on Fighter for a bit. And with Psy Warrior, we get those cool features. Protect the Field lets us reduce some damage. Psionic Strike lets us add some damage. But what we're really interested in is telekinetic movement. This allows us to move objects with our mind. If it's a tiny object, we can move it to or from our hand as an action. We can move it horizontally, vertically, or both. We can move one willing creature or up to a large loose object 30 feet in any direction.
You're not a Jedi yet.
No, but we are a Fighter 5 at level 8. Our first ASI and extra attack. Whichever half feat you didn't take at level 1, you should take it now. If you took Skill Expert, take Telepathic. If you took Telepathic, take Telekinetic. Luke is about to unlock some or all of those abilities up next. But first, we get extra attack finally at Fighter 5. Before he faces off 1v1 with Vader, Luke picks up a few more things from Yoda. And here is where we start to really round out our Force powers. We're going to multi-class into Wizard. Why Wizard? Well, spell selection. Nearly all Force powers can be found on the Wizard spell list. The few that we can't, we've already picked up through Artificer levels. Here's a list of all Force abilities shown in live-action movies, and corresponding D&D features, spells, or abilities, along with color coding to indicate class and level of that ability. Blue indicates Wizard spells or features. As you can tell, there's a lot of blue. Wizard's great. Ritual casting. As we'll see, many of the Jedi powers comes from a meditative state, which allows them a better connection to the Force. Ritual casting is a solid analog for that. And then Arcane Recovery, another ability that allows us an increase of power, in this case recovering spell slots through rest, recovery, and study. Most meditation-style abilities will work well for a Jedi. Okay, so the spellbook. Not a great thematic and mechanical fit for Luke, or any Jedi really. Yes, we later learn that there are Jedi texts that are studied to learn spell-like Jedi abilities, but they don't need to carry them around, study them daily, or copy new spells into them. So in this way, Sorcerer makes a bit more sense, and the Aberrant Mind Origin has some nice options that work for us, but it doesn't mix well with Psy Warrior or Artificer. Doesn't have the spell list, although once you sub out the psionic spells you don't want with Wizard spells, you can solve this issue. But really what it comes down to is the Wizard schools work really well for what we want here. So between that and Wizards being intelligence-based casters, the Wizard is probably the best fit for us. Then the question is, which school to pick? I really want to go War Magic here. Their level 2 ability is super strong. Tactical Wit gives us a bonus to initiative rolls, which is awesome. And Arcane Deflection is just so perfect, both mechanically and thematically, that it almost kills me not to take War Magic. There are 3 things stopping me. 1, the level 6 War Magic ability Power Surge is just bad and annoying. I don't like it. 2, our armor class sucks right now. Luke's not wearing armor anymore, so we're probably not either. Mage armor is a decent fix, but it's not something Luke actually uses. So if there's something else that works, we probably should go with that. And there is. Because 3, Bladesinger has a lot to offer at both levels 2 and 6 that are really great for us. With Bladesinger, when we use Blade Song, we get a bonus to armor class rather than War Magic's initiative bump, and honestly the AC is more important to us for this build. The speed bump is nice, but the concentration saving throw bonus is great for us. We don't have Warcaster, and our con isn't terribly high. We are proficient in con saving throws because we started Artificer, and with this ability we shouldn't lose concentration much at all. This one was a big surprise to me. The advantage on acrobatics checks is perfectly thematic for Luke. I mean, I had no idea how often he did flipperoos. Let's dive a little deeper into the spells. I've categorized many of the force powers we see Luke use in the original trilogy into a few broad categories. At Wizard 3, we can cast 2nd level spells, so most of the spells we're going to see will be cantrips through level 2, with a couple of exceptions. Minor telekinesis, moving stuff with our mind, but not doing anything crazy like crushing robots or ripping objects off the wall and tossing them mid-combat, etc. The actual telekinesis spell comes with Wizard 9, and most of what Luke does can be handled with telekinetic movement, but there are still a few good options for us. Mage Hand, especially the invisible hand from the telekinetic feat, works well with smaller objects. Levitate is a strong 2nd level pickup. And Floating Disc is a ritual levitation spell that works thematically and mechanically. Spells like Catapult fit really well, but we don't actually see Luke use this until much, much later. Finally, and weirdly one of my favorite Star Wars moments, we can flavor Sleep as Luke's Force Choke. It's pretty late for Sleep, but we can still make use of it if we cast it on damaged or weak enemies. The Jedi Mind Tricks, the ability to influence and control others. Most of these fall into the Charm category, so naturally Charm Person is the obvious level 1 choice. Suggestion is almost exactly a Jedi Mind Trick, a short sentence with a direction the target must follow.
You serve your master well. I must be allowed to speak.
Talking through the target is a bit of a stretch for Suggestion, although you could probably make that work with a repeat everything I say suggestion.
You will bring Captain Solo and the Wookiee to me.
Then we have Telepathy, the ability to mentally communicate or interact with other individuals. Most of the standard telepathy we use will be through the message cantrip, which we should pick up as a wizard if we replaced it with the Artificer selections. Eventually, when we can cast 3rd level spells, Sending will be much more thematically appropriate. This is one of those abilities that the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer would have nailed with telepathic speech.
Your thoughts betray you, Father. I feel the good in you.
And finally, Detect Thoughts, which we get through the telepathic feat. It's perfect for reading thoughts of others, which Luke does to Vader.
Vader's here. Now, on this moon.
And also sensing the presence of other unseen people or creatures, which we see several times in the movies. Farsight, basically clairvoyance or divination abilities. There aren't a lot of one-to-one analogs between the movie and specific spells, but there are certainly some good options that fit thematically. Augury as a lower level ritual that gives a sense of the future. As a higher level option, divination at 4th level fits, but anything that allows us to sense the unknown works well. So at lower levels, guidance, detect magic, detect evil and good, gift of alacrity, identify, locate object, and clairvoyance are all good choices. As for the Force Ghost, I'm not entirely sure if it's a power of the deceased. Can they project to anyone regardless of Force sensitivity? If it's a Force sensitive person who can pick up on the Force Ghost, or both. And beyond that, I have no idea what D&D mechanic this would correspond to. Speak with Dead maybe, but that requires a body, so it's not a great fit. I could have left this out, but it's kind of a big part of the story. If you got any ideas, let me know in the comments below. We're going to head back to Fighter for levels 12 and 13 for Fighter 6 and 7. We get another ASI at Fighter 6, so max out Intelligence if you haven't already. If you're at 20, go ahead and grab another feat like Alert. Warcaster or Lucky are also good options. Fighter 7 gets us Telekinetic Adept, which has 2 features. The first, Psi Power Leap, is pretty much a perfect analog for the force jump. As a bonus action, you gain a flying speed equal to double your walking speed until the end of your current turn. Not a particularly great ability, but thematically it's right on point. Second, we get telekinetic thrust, which adds on to your psionic strike so that when damage is dealt, you can either knock the enemy prone or move it horizontally 10 feet in any direction. We do see Luke do this to Vader a couple of times in their fights, so I will happily use this ability. Next, we're sticking with Fighter for another ASI. At this point, you should have Telepathic, Telekinetic, and Maxed Intelligence. Lucky is a great pickup, as I said, as Luke can use the Force to divine future events. That connection also makes him very unlikely to roll poorly. Crappy roll? Thank you, Force. I'll take another. Warcaster does give you some additional options, especially with casting on an opportunity attack. An off-turn Booming Blade attack can do some nice damage at this level. It took 42 years, but we finally get to see Luke use the Force push and pull, as well as using telekinetic force abilities mid-combat. Catapult, stronger catapult, and even some very strong telekinetic force powers. To get access to those, we need to go all the way to Wizard 9, which takes us to level 20. Level 5 wizard spells are an abundance of riches for this build. Telekinesis is the obvious choice here, but animate objects as a means to continually throw objects at enemies is perfect. Although we never see Luke do this, that's more of a Vader thing, but it's such an awesome spell it's hard to pass up. Dominate person if we want to use mind tricks to take over somebody completely. Telepathic bond is a much better version of message and sending that we've seen Luke use with Vader and Leia. Even Wall of Force can be flavored to work here. Besides being one of the best level 5 spells in the game, it's got Force right in the name, wink wink. And we can't forget about Big B's hand. You want to crush someone with your mind? The hand will do it. Okay, so back to level 6. The Blade Singer gets extra attack, and we already have extra attack through Fighter, and that's not good. I have a pretty firm rule never to create a character that doubles up on extra attack because it's such a waste of one of the better class features in the game. It's completely suboptimal. But here's the thing. This level 6 Blade Singer extra attack feature still gives us more than the level 6 War Magic feature because the Blade Singer gives us an added ability tied to this feature. You can cast one of your cantrips in place of one of those attacks. And that, folks, is well worth it. Attack, Green Flame Blade, force push an enemy away to avoid an opportunity attack, and move away from the target. It's perfect. So that is Luke Skywalker in D&D 5e. But wait, we need to talk about
much anger in him, like his father.
If you want to create an accurate Luke Skywalker build, which we're doing here, then you actually have to be a bit suboptimal and take a 4th multiclass. And to do that, we need to adjust our ability scores, which is totally doable, but again, suboptimal. You're going to want to take a 13 in strength, 15 dex, 12 in con, 15 intelligence, 8 wisdom, and 8 charisma. We still bump dex and intelligence with racial bonuses. At some point, probably early on, you're going to want to take barbarian levels, exactly 2. Since we're capped at 20 levels, that needs to come from somewhere. Honestly, if you're sticking to the original trilogy, then wizard levels probably make the most sense. The higher level spells are rarely used by Luke in those movies. Starting with Empire, Luke's internal character progression revolves around his brewing anger and its pull towards the dark side. It's a major through line throughout both Empire and Jedi, culminating one of the best and certainly one of the most iconic cinematic examples of losing control as a means to win a fight. In fact, without Luke giving into his anger, he probably doesn't defeat Vader, which is why I'm including it here. He clearly rages and uses reckless attack, both giving him the necessary advantage that puts him over the edge against Vader. But he only uses it for this one fight, one time, which is why I didn't include it in the primary build, despite it being integral to the story. So the option is there for you. If you want to use it, go ahead. And that, my friends, is Luke Skywalker.